Welcome to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm your host, Kristina Root, and I am Program Director of Hingham Cares. Our mission is to reduce substance use among youth in our community. We want our kids to make healthy choices around drugs and alcohol, so we provide information to teens, parents, and the community at large about the risks associated with teen substance use. With us today is someone who is engaged in groundbreaking work within the recovery community. Willie Ostiguy is a lieutenant with the Boston Fire Department, where he manages their employee assistance program, and the founder of the first recovery high school in Massachusetts. He also happens to be the uncle of Chris Meyer, who is the founder of Mudhouse Media, with whom we're producing this podcast. Welcome, Willie. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
So let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you lived in Massachusetts? A little bit about your work as a firefighter.
I've lived in Massachusetts 75 years now. I grew up in South Boston, and I moved to Dorchester. I've been in Quincy for about 40 years now, and spent 40 years in the fire department. Retired. Actually, I work with Chris's dad. He was on about 6 or 7 of us on the same family on the department, which isn't unusual. So it's just...
Great. So you are a person in recovery yourself, correct?
That's true.
Does that drive the work that you do?
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't be on the radar screen if I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I would.
Could you share your personal story with us? How old were you when you started?
I can share some of it, sure.
Okay, great.
No. I actually got into recovery, actually, in about a week, it'll be 52 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's better this way. I wouldn't be 75, I'll tell you that. Right. But at any rate, I came, and things fell into place departmentally, through my whole career so far, and went up through the ladder, different ranks and different things. We set up a program in the fire department, for our members and their families, and then we set it up with the international, and it's progress. I mean, at the beginning, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, from a labor standpoint, I was always involved with labor. But at one point, labor actually had in their contract that they could, like a beer break.
No kidding.
People just shake their head. It's like, what? That can't be real. It's like, take a look.
Right.
Take a look at the history. But things have changed. They've evolved, and for the better. A lot of people's lives have been saved. We saved a lot of, and I won't say we saved, but we've reached out to a lot of the members' children, because that's a major problem. We did some research there. We've done some work there, and some of it has been very good. It's an interesting concept when you look at that. Mm-hmm. I know when we were researching it, I want to say there was 76,000 kids in Mass that had substance abuse problems in high school. Wow. 16,000 of them might have got treatment. The other 60, I guess they were just forgotten. They were lost souls. But the 16,000 were going back to their respective schools, and everybody they get their drugs from, and everybody they use with is there. It's like getting somebody with an alcohol problem and sitting in a bar stool and see how long they're going to last. It wasn't working. So out of that evolved, and there was a lot going on then. Actually, the labor secretary now, Marty Walsh, was part of the equation, and now he's the head of the AFL-CIO, Steve Tolman. He was the senator then. Brian Walsh was a rep. But we put it together. We ended up putting together. Steve and I went to Minnesota. We come back. We got the recovery high school concept in place. They were very good to us. They were more than willing to share their information with us, and they did. And they opened. They've been open for 16 years. And it's ironic. My wife ran into, she was at the registry, which is a nightmare by itself. But she was down there. I don't know if she was renewing her license or something. And she was at a window, and she said her last name. And the woman the next window down said, "Oh, my daughter graduated from there." She said she's a nurse. She's got a couple of young kids.
No kidding.
That's what counts. The rest of it's nonsense.
Hearing those success stories, it must be
very
gratifying.
Yeah.
And you probably don't hear too many of them, because once the kids are done with school, they're kind of off on their own. How many people actually reach back out to you or other members of the high school?
I don't see a lot of them, but I see some. If they stay local, I'm going to see them anyways. It is, and they've gotten their lives back together. It's ironic. I mean, last year, actually, one of the kids, there's a couple of scholarships that are given out every year, and actually Dropkick Murphys, the Clatter Fund, gives them out. And the young lady was getting it. She's getting a full ride to Tufts.
Wow.
These aren't people that aren't intelligent.
Right.
They're going to be intelligent just to survive on the street.
Right. Well, substance use issues cross all different demographics, socioeconomic, race, everything. You find it everywhere. So that's not surprising that you've got some really bright individuals at the high school that are really just struggling with this particular issue. It's nice that you're providing them options for a future. So the evolutionary process where you started as a firefighter, you had your own substance use issues, you started working on your sobriety, and then from there came the employee assistance program, and out of that stemmed the concern for these kids and the development of these sober high schools, recovery high schools?
That was pretty much the road that was followed.
And what kind of a time span are we looking at from start to, the opening of the doors of the high school?
It probably took about 2 years because it wasn't easy to do. There's no question about it. A lot of people, it takes a village. I mean, a lot of them put time and effort into it. But we went to the city council, we went to the school committee. Everybody, as usual, thinks it's a great idea, but the bottom line ends up being money.
Right.
And it's funny, we had 3 kids from here going to school in Minnesota.
Oh, no kidding.
So
because they offered that program
when we called
there.
out there, because they had 10 at the time. And I said, interesting, with the hub of the universe, we have to send 3 kids to Minnesota.
Right.
Well, that didn't sit well with me and others. But we ended up, one of the young ladies, she came back for the summer, naturally, and she went to the school committee with us. And actually, a friend of mine was on the school committee, and he said, well, I thought all schools were supposed to be sober. And I mean, young kids don't have an off switch. She said, you must live on Mars, mister. And then put him right in his place, which I couldn't be happier. It's just a good guy, but I mean, where else are you going to get your stuff? Who else? Everybody you party with.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to use some common sense. It was a simple idea, and it's working, so.
That's amazing. And what is the application process like?
You have to have a substance abuse problem.
Mm-hmm.
We had a fight there too, because one woman wanted to send her daughter. She just sent her to like 2 or 3 private schools. She didn't have a problem, but she wanted to send her to a school that didn't have a substance abuse problem. I said, they don't exist.
Right.
I don't care where you live. It could be Hingham, it could be Quincy, it could be South Boston. There's major problems everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
But at any rate, that she was going to sue us. That was almost a real show.
Wow.
She backed off at the last minute, thank God. But at any rate, it's working. I mean, how else can you say it? I mean, we had to have the Boston Teachers Union. If they didn't sanction it, it wasn't going to happen. So you got to learn how to play in a couple of different areas.
Right.
Between the politicians, between the school committee. It's ironic. I was on with one of my cohorts in Florida last week from New York. The Department of Education in New York didn't think it was necessary. I'm looking like, really? It's amazing. You shake your head. It's like, you think you're making progress, and then, the stigma that goes with it. Everybody else that's got a disability, is being dealt with. That population should be dealt with. Otherwise, what we found was the young kids were going to jail, the boys, and the girls are usually having having a baby. Their education, everything went out the window. If they weren't sober and they didn't have an education, they were doomed anyways.
Right. It's so tragic.
It's simple to watch too. I mean, if you watch it, everybody wants to call it everything but what it is.
Well, there's a lot of denial. I mean, there's stigma, and then there's denial also. And those
his parents too.
Exactly.
You want little Johnny to have anything but.
Right. So you've touched on this a little bit. What kind of trends have you seen over time in terms of societal awareness of the risks associated with substance use, underage substance use? Obviously police officers aren't taking cases of beer away from kids and sending them on their way anymore. And there's a reason for that. So what have you seen over the past several decades that you've been doing this work that's changed?
I'm smiling because I used to be one of those kids.
Yeah.
And I would steal it back from them. No, it's just, at any rate, early on, it was basically alcohol, But a lot of these substances were around, just a lot of people weren't using them. I know even my father's generation, and my father-in-law, they were all smoking dope when they were in World War II. Everybody thinks they invented the wheel here.
Right.
Not the case. Go back to the Roman Empire. It'd still be there if they went, eating cocaine. They call it cane leaves and stuff. It destroys a lot of things. It destroys everything, actually. Families, marriages, your life eventually. But at any rate, try to set some programs up so people can get help. It was booze at the beginning. And it was booze and drugs. And, you see everybody's, the opiates is one thing. We've all gone through it. It's still there, but, the fentanyl is there now. It's really not even existent. And some of the stuff they come up with, it's just, I've gone out to Vancouver when Marty was the mayor, and we were out there for a convention, and we looked at some of the sites they were talking about. They get it. Was that, if you think, in my world, because our headquarters is right on Mass and Cass. Out in Vancouver, they make Mass and Cass look like it was a kindergarten.
Really?
Oh, it was brutal. It was terrible.
What do you attribute that to? We talk, in the prevention world, we talk about two keys to prevention. One is adult parental role modeling, so modeling good behavior for kids. And the other is access. So limiting access, to your point, you just said, these things were available, but they weren't readily available. So limiting access is certainly a protective factor as well. What do you attribute the extent of what you've been seeing, the extent of what you saw in Vancouver, what you see on Melnia Cass? What do you attribute that to?
I think everybody's doing what they think is the right thing, but a lot of them I don't buy into a lot of it, to be honest.
You mean people in the field?
Yeah. It's just, and I've been doing it for a long time. I'm the chairman of the board of the Gavin. We've been doing it for a long time. We've got men's houses. We just opened a women's house. We've got adolescent programs, which is a feeder system actually for the high school.
Okay.
Because we're trying to educate them while they're getting back on their feet. Mm-hmm. But some of the things that I see, it's just, whether I'm right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's my opinion. It's just, and I'm going to stick with it. You can take that to the bank. They hate to see me sometimes. It's like, I'm looking like, I said it to one of my friends, he's a doc. I said, what are you going to put the world on Suboxone? It's a level 3 narcotic. It's like, come on. I've seen people try to get off of it. It's worse than the stuff that they're on. It's just, and I know they're trying. Sometimes I don't know if the docs can't figure it out, so they want to medicate it. It's like, that's not the answer. Education's the answer. Long-term treatment's the answer.
So you say education. We're obviously in the prevention field. We're a prevention coalition. And one of the things that we do is we educate, as I mentioned in my little intro, we educate teens and parents in the community on the risks and the harms associated with underage use, specifically underage use, because we want to prevent kids from going down that road of using substances. In your experience, can you speak to why it's so risky for young people to use substances? Why does it make it that much more dangerous than for, say, folks in their 20s and 30s?
Well, the earlier you start it. If the average age is experimenting at 13, they emotionally stop growing. What are you doing in the first place? Now you got somebody that's 20 years old that really has the mind of a 13-year-old, and they're making decisions like a 13-year-old. And if you don't intervene, they're going to continue to do that, and it's going to get worse.
So the impact on the brain is critical.
All by itself. It's almost like I get my own little stuff with the legalization of marijuana. We got, messages on a pack of cigarettes, but yet you can smoke a bone, which has got all the carcinogens in it, and you're going to live happily ever after. It's like, come on. I mean, I get negative because it's all about money.
Are you seeing more of a trend in marijuana use and abuse since it's been legalized?
You know, it's always been there anyways.
Right.
And usually alcohol's always in there somewhere because they got to maintain. But I listen to some people. It's like, man, where are you coming from? You haven't got a clue.
What people? People in the field?
Just people in general. In general.
Just the people in society.
You know, they start running their mouth. They're talking about it. And it's like, you're clueless.
What are some of the most common misconceptions you've heard?
I think you said it a couple of minutes ago. They just deny that there is a problem. Mm-hmm. Or if they see the problem, they dress it up as anything they want to, but what it actually is. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's tough to combat that.
Right.
You know, those kids are not going away. They're going to be somebody's headache. And the money that, if through their lifetime, and I forget what the figures were at the time, but if you get one person using substances, then say it's a young lady, she ends up on subsidized housing, she ends up on this, she ends up on that, she ends up losing and never getting an education. You know, and it's like, if you're looking at dollar figures, the dollar figure, by the time that's over, is astronomical.
Right.
Why don't you just get us some help long term? May or may not work. I'm not saying everything is going to be rosy, but what I'm seeing them do now is just, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned that ripple effect earlier, how someone's substance use can damage a family, can damage their career, can do all kinds of damage. Now you're talking about economic damage. When you were looking into the impact of adult substance use on kids, like parents who use, and the impact that it has on the children, was that kind of cutting edge thinking at the time when you were really looking into it? Was there much data that you could rely upon at that point?
There wasn't a whole lot, but if the child gets straight and mom and dad are using when they go home, well, how long do you think it's going to take before the kid jumps on board and, you know,
sets them back?
Instead of the breakfast of champion, mom and dad are having a big doobie for breakfast. It's like, it's got to make some sense somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And I think some folks get it and some don't. And not that they're not trying, but I don't think they look at the big picture. You know, we've had kids in the house, male and female, that we wouldn't let them go home because of the parents' behavior.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, why would you?
Right.
You're setting them up to fail.
Right.
You know, mom's saying, keep up the good work, and she's doing exactly what you're in that particular facility for.
Wow.
You know?
That certainly, I would imagine, poses challenges for you and for the facility as you're making decisions about the best interests of the kids, but also bearing in mind that they're still minors and still under their parental control, correct? I mean, there is that fine line that you have to walk.
Yeah.
And how many how many recovery high schools are there in Massachusetts?
It's 4 now, 4 or 5. And there's a couple more on the board. One, I think the next one might be on the Cape. There's one in Brockton. There's one in the North Shore. Someone said, why the North Shore? I said, well, think about it. Kerry Haley was the lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. She actually supported it and, you know, come up with the millions of dollars to start them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Nice.
And her only request was that. It's like, what are you going to say, no?
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier, there's a need everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So, and can you tell us a little bit about the 2 houses that you have for adults? You have a house for men and a house for women, and a house for, I believe it's 2 houses for women. One for
women. We just opened it. And we have 3 for men.
Okay, 3 for men. And the one for women, they can actually have their children stay with them. Is that correct?
They can, if they're pregnant, and they can stay until the pregnancy is over.
Okay.
No, but there's a whole liability piece that comes in with that it's just, but I don't know if you know the area, that the new one is right across from St. Gregory's Church in Lower Mills in Dorchester.
No.
It's the old convent.
Okay.
You know, and it's a good setting, and it's just, actually 3 or 4 of the nuns that were there come in and saw the girls the women that are in there.
Oh, really?
It was like a trip down memory lane for them.
Wow.
And we have, there's about 6 women on our board I mean, that motion was made 25 years ago to get a woman's house, and we just got it. We just opened it last month, maybe 4 months ago.
No kidding.
You know, and it was like, I'm looking at the woman on the board. I'm looking like, this isn't going over well.
Wow.
But it was necessary too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the young girls have actually at least caught up to the boys. You know.
In terms of use?
Oh yeah.
Percentage of use?
Yeah.
Is there a distinction between what boys tend to misuse and what girls tend to misuse in terms of substances?
I would think that the young women, they're going to start probably little booze, little smoking some dope, and then they're going to get into the Percocet, Percocet. You can almost see the progression, and then they'll go into the opiates and then things get too expensive, and the heroin is cheaper. You know, now with the fentanyl, forget it. You know, one bad mistake, you're done.
Right. No, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. There's a lot of dispute about whether or not there is this concept of gateway drugs. So whether or not alcohol or marijuana, sort of the more common types of drugs, are gateway drugs for use of more potent substances down the road.
I'm smiling because I'm from a different world. I know that, but it's like, I never heard anybody say as a young person, hey, let's get some fentanyl, you know, let's get some heroin. There's something that leads up to it. You know, it just didn't happen to be going by.
Right.
You know, it's naive at the beginning. Let's try a beer. Let's do this. So there are gateway things. Whether people agree with it or not, that's their business. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I don't see anybody that's the average kid in the street saying, let's get a bag of heroin and let's shoot up before they went on anything else.
Right.
So
there is
I think you can disprove the theory, and they can probably disprove what I think too. But that's fine.
But from what you've seen, that is the progression.
I don't see anybody sticking a needle in their arm that didn't do anything else first.
Right.
No.
If there were one piece of advice that you would want every young person, every teenager to hear, what would that be?
Again, you go back to the schools. I don't know what, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th grade, start giving them some kind of education on what they're in store for. Because, I mean, you live in a society. Somebody dies, you drink. Somebody gets married, you drink. Somebody has a child, there's a christening, they drink. It's our culture. You know, if they get wrapped up in it, you know, nobody picks a drink or anything else up and says, I'm going to destroy my life. Right. You know, and then once they do, nobody ever that ends up with a problem. They're going back to it. Mm-hmm. So they either get into recovery or they end up dead or in jail. Or.
So we hear from kids and from parents that one of the things that's pervasive in our culture is parents wanting their kids to have their first drink under their roof, under their supervision, or to get them ready for college by having them drink before they go off to college and making sure they can handle it, quote unquote. We know from the statistics that we have from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's administered in Hingham that a fair amount of kids party in people's basements with or without parental knowledge. Sometimes parents even provide the alcohol. So do you think that adults, parents, treat alcohol in a different way from other substances? Do you think that there's a different perception of risk with alcohol?
I personally would like to think that they would be the parent and they'd make the tough decisions they have to make rather than just continue to make these conceptions. You know, I mean, they're giving kids bad information. You know, maybe they were fed that kind of information. You know, it manifests itself in the form of kids getting drunk and driving, dying in car accidents, and the behavior. Like you said, half of the kids in their freshman year in college, if it's a party school, they're done before they even get by the first semester. Mm-hmm. So, mom and dad going to sign off on that too? Right. You know, it just doesn't make sense to a guy like me. You know, I mean, I remember my dad saying to me years ago, he says, I'm your father, I'm not your friend. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make decisions that I think are right. I'm not really interested in what you think right now. Maybe when you become an adult. But other than that, ain't happening. And guess what? I became my father, and I'm tickled to pink to be there.
That's
So
smart advice. Have you ever had any personal experiences where your children have been placed in a position where they've been offered alcohol and you've had to say something on their behalf?
yes, I have. In fact, when the boys were playing high school hockey and stuff, they had a party because they won the championship, and the father took it upon himself to, in his view, let all the kids that were there drink. And I got wind of it, so I went down. I told my 2 stars, let's go. The party's over. They weren't happy about it, but I don't need somebody else telling my kids, contradicting what I'm trying to show them.
Right.
And in fact, it was ironic, did you ask? On the way home, one of the cheerleaders got in a little fender bender because she was stiff, and they could have went right back and sued the hell out of the parents that thought they were doing the right thing.
Right.
I won't. I'll leave it at that because it's kind of a ridiculous subject in my eyes. The parents might think they're doing the right thing, but they should rethink their thought processes.
One of my former colleagues at Hingham Cares, she's now working with Chris Herron, she says that it's sort of the height of arrogance for parents to think that they can provide children with alcohol or any other substance, but primarily it's alcohol, and think that they're going to know how that child's going to handle it. So to your point, that cheerleader was provided with a substance by another parent, got into an accident. Thankfully, it wasn't worse than it actually was. It was a bit arrogant for that parent to think that it was okay for that young girl to have alcohol, to partake in a substance. So I think parents need to be thinking about that in addition to the liability issues. You have social host laws and all kinds of other things on the books.
I mean, at some point, you got to be the parent. You're not there to be your child's friend. I get that.
Right. Well, we have a newly formed parent partners group. It's a group of about 12 parents who have kids in the Hingham schools, all very on board with our mission, all very concerned about their kids and their kids' decision-making processes and keeping them healthy. And one of the things that we talk about as Hingham Cares and staff and board members is providing these parents with cover to do just that, providing them with cover so that they feel supported in speaking up, because you're very outspoken.
To say the least.
You're not afraid to speak your mind. You're not afraid to stand up to another parent, which is commendable. A lot of parents don't feel that way or don't behave that way. It's a little bit more difficult, more challenging. They don't want to be thought of as the parent that is, the one raining on everyone's parade. They don't want their kids to be socially ostracized. So they tend to hold back a little bit. And we want to be able to provide them cover. We want to be able to provide them with information that they can share with other parents. And we want them to feel confident doing exactly what you just did, or you just said you did with your kids, to say no to the other parents, to say no to your kids. It's important, like you said, to be the parent and not be the friend.
I mean, that doesn't mean your child isn't going to try it and experiment anyways.
Right.
But you're not going to give them the green light to just go ahead and do what you want. And then when they get in trouble and you end up in the police station and say, how'd you end up here? Like you said, I could do this. Or a lot of the parents just don't know any better. They need to be educated too.
Right.
Because there was nothing in place when they were growing up.
Exactly. We say all the time that no parent wants to place their child in harm's way. So I think a lot of it is misinformation. A lot of it is this hereditary information that's passed down from generation to generation. I'm sure when you were growing up, alcohol, there was no real stigma associated with it. Tell us what your life was like growing up with your parents and your family. Was alcohol use pervasive?
My siblings, it was pretty good. The rest of the family, we have a big family. It was completely out of control. I mean, we've lost plenty of the uncles who booze at the time, and there's still some. And recently, we've lost 2 or 3 kids to overdoses.
Wow.
One of them graduated from school. He was playing football. Had 2 master's degrees. It doesn't matter. Right. You go to the well one too many times. One was an accident. One was an overdose. One of the young ladies overdosed down Mass and Cass. I don't know how you can prevent it. I wish I knew. I wouldn't care if you chained them to a radiator rather than have them see them die.
Right. So you consider yourself one of the more fortunate members of your family to have taken your sobriety journey.
Yeah, but there's about 6 or 7 of us in recovery. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of us walking around.
Right. So what is that like when friends or when people you know come into town? Are you sort of a point of contact for those people to take them to a meeting or to provide them with the support that they need?
Yeah, it depends if they're coming in, especially departmentally, because like I said, I'm still involved with the international. So a lot of them come to town, a lot of them are in recovery. So we take care of business there. A lot of the people you're going to be interviewing, same thing. You know, it's a little, it's not so little anymore. It's a melting pot.
Right.
Thank God it's there. Yeah, you'd have 2 more million people walking around bumping into each other.
Right. Right. Did you go the route of AA when you were getting sober?
I get into recovery. I'm big on anonymity.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
I can't shove it down everybody else's throat and do it myself.
Right.
So,
can you share with us any of the success stories that you know of? Kids who've come out of the school?
I can give you some of the stats, and I can give you some of the kids that I know. 50% of the kids coming out of the school, recovery high schools, go on to higher education. These kids weren't even making it in school. They were dropping out of school.
Right.
You know, so now they're going on to college. You know, and 90% of them graduate. I don't think you get that much of a success rate in a regular high school.
Wow.
You know, I mean, so you can see it works. You know, so it's worth the time, it's worth the effort. Yeah, we've had a lot of them. Like I said, you know, the young lady last year, she's going to Tufts. She's got a full ride. She's that bright. You know, we've had one young man. He ended up going to West Point. I mean, there's a lot of things. They're not stupid people.
It's amazing.
You know, I mean, I see a kid not too long ago. He's doing good now, but he ended up getting a gold medal in the Olympics. It's like talented people. You know, so it's kind of like, why are you going to let them just ruin their entire life? You know, you can get people like from my era, everybody, my peers, sports was a biggie, you know, and then you get the guys that are like 50 years old, still wearing the high school football jackets, you know, that whatever they are, they're still my friends, but it's like, what are you doing? You know, they're jobless. Some of them are homeless. You know, there's another individual I talked to just the other day. He spent a couple of years at Mass and Cass, and he ended up, he had his own tent, his own little setup, and I foolishly asked him, because he was always bumming money, and I said, how much can you make in a day? He said, $400-500. I'm looking like, to get my old clothes out and get down there and make a few bucks. But I mean, they're creative. I mean, imagine living at Mass and Cass for 2 years. I mean, how do you even survive?
Well, that's what the addiction has done to them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that $400 or $500 a day is not going to.
Oh no, I mean, people don't realize they have to shoot up 4 to 6 times a day.
Right.
It's like, where's that coming from?
Right.
You know, and then you got the problems of Mass and Cass. You know, and they've tried some different things, but it's like it's just a horror. You know?
Could you just explain what Mass and Cass is for those who are unfamiliar with it?
Mass and Cass is an area of the city of Boston. Mass and Cass is Massachusetts Avenue and Melina Cass Boulevard. That's where they intersect. But the thing they have there, they have a shelter. They have a methadone clinic. They get the shelter. So they're coming from all around. They're coming from everywhere, whether it's Hingham, Quincy, Duxbury, you know, Roxbury, Dorchester. Oh, that's where everybody's at. So now you got 300-400 people walking around, tent city. You know, it's a mess down there. You know, my old place of work, our headquarters is right there. We've had to cordon the whole thing off. You know, they're putting the people out of business down there.
Right.
You know, and it just, most of them are messed up, but it's like a haven for that particular population.
So with kids in school that are accessing substances, those substances typically are coming from their peers, correct? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, and someone's giving it to them.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably in their position at one point. Now they make them dealers, and then there's a whole chain of command.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
From what you've seen, do the majority of these adults, did they start using substances at a younger age? Or are you finding that there are people in recovery or, people battling addiction who started using at an older age? Do you know kind of roughly what the percentage is, teen versus older start?
I would actually, in my opinion, I'd be shocked if everybody down there didn't start in their teens.
Yeah.
And then they just progressed. And if they ended up having an addictive personality, this is the route they were going to end up in. Some of them don't want to get straight. That's their life. They don't want housing. They don't want a lot of things. No, it's a major problem. It's not an easy solution. I get it. But some of the avenues that are being used now aren't helping anybody either.
But you've talked a lot about the importance of education, the importance of parental involvement, the importance of prevention, keeping kids away from substances. And those are all really critical components to making sure people don't end up in those situations later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, I view my role as a parent completely different than some folks, evidently. I'll play the role of the parent. I don't want anybody to have, if I can prevent somebody from going down that road, especially my children, that's what I'm going to do. Like I said earlier, I'm not their friend. I'm their father. I'll make the tough decisions. You can pout about it, but guess what? You still may do it, but if I catch you, you're going to be made accountable for it.
Right.
There's no accountability. Like, why would you stop doing anything? Mom and dad want to be your best friend? Like, come on. You're that sad?
Right. So where can people find out more about the William Ostiguy High School and the other recovery high schools?
They can go to the William J. Ostiguy Recovery High School.com and everything will come up. The graduating classes for the last 16 years, the scholarships, the school itself, the interview process, everything will come up. The other thing, you could go on the Gavin Foundation website, and they do the substance abuse piece in the school. Every morning the kids meet, they talk, they see a substance abuse counselor. They walk them through the whole process. So they've got a pretty good layout for the whole thing.
That's before getting into the academics.
Yeah. And everything academically will be as if when they do graduate, I'm glad that you brought that up. The graduation, their diploma reads the high school that they came from.
Oh, interesting.
So they won't walk into college and have stigma again. No, kids are cruel.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. The high school is it's a boarding school, correct?
It's what?
A boarding school?
No.
Oh, kids don't live there?
Yeah. Oh.
They get bused there and then
They take transportation.
Okay.
It's on Temple Place, which is between Washington and Tremont, right near the Boston Common. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was put there, for that particular reason. It's an ABC building. They got the contract. So it's housed there.
Oh, okay.
So they can all take the Rattler or the T or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was, when you mentioned you didn't want the kids to go back to being with their parents, I thought you meant the kids lived on campus.
At that point, when they interview them, if they think mom and dad got a problem, and the child could go home and relapse. And then what ends up happening is the student body actually determines whether they can come back, dust them off and get them back into the school. Because what you can't have is one kid being negative. He'll drag the rest of them down.
Right.
No. Like, what are you doing here? This is nonsense. I take my hat off to the teachers. It's just, until the kids really get on their feet, they're not happy campus.
Right. You're dealing with kids in all different phases of
they all got
recovery.
attitudes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
So I want to thank you again for joining us, Willie, for this enlightening conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. We all want to do what we can to keep our kids safe and healthy. You've been listening to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm your host, Kristen Arute, and I hope you will join us again.